Okay, welcome back. So just to drive home this point, SSL has been out there for quite some time, and version 3, it was deprecated, I like that term, in 2015. Okay? You should not be using any version of SSL, and if you are, shame on you. Most people are still using 1.2, and 1.3 is still being worked on. Okay? Yes, it is the latest and greatest version. But I've seen an awful lot of people just still using 1.2, and that's okay. It's not bad. All right, so let's continue. So to get one of these things, I need a certificate. I have to have a piece of information that I can use to digitally sign a certificate so that you know who I am. Now let me explain how this works. Okay, so I have to go. I have a digital signature. I'm a developer, and I digitally sign the stuff that I write. Okay, but the stuff you have to go through that is incredible. It's sort of like a security clearance. You have to prove who you are. You got to show up, with driver's license and go to a notary and have them verify that you are who you are. And then you have to send off your money to a company, and then later they'll come back with a challenge, and you have to do some stuff, and then it is very, very involved, and you end up with a secure token, typically on a USB thumb drive, that you use to create your certificate, and then you put your certificate on your website, and now everyone knows it came from you. So the certificate has two major functions. One is it proves that you are who you say you are. If you say I am kumquat.com, then that it's from kumquat.com, not from anyone else. So it proves you are who you say you are. And the second one is that nothing has happened in transit. If I send you a byte of information from my website to your browser, then I'm pretty much will guarantee that nobody has messed with it. It has not been altered. So I know who I am. For sure, you know what website you're going to. An SSL certificate in a wrong location will pop up and say, I'm sorry, they don't match, and you won't go anywhere in your browser. No one has messed with it, and encryption. That's the major one that everyone talks about is encryption, but quite frankly, that's not the only one. It's, are you who you say you are? Has it messed with? And am I secure? So SSL is absolutely required for doing most web stuff. Now, you, as a user, don't have to do anything. You just fire up your browser, and the browser goes and looks at the certificate, checks it out, and goes, okay, that matches, I'm happy. Now, you've probably been to websites where they're not secure, and you get a little thing that pops up and says, dude, what the heck? Are you sure? All right, cool. All right. So, when I connect to Microsoft, I want to know that I'm connecting to Microsoft. I don't want to be whisked off to some other site and not pay attention. And every web owner has to do their own thing. Now, wait a minute now. This is kind of weird. Remember we talked about how you have a single web server could have multiple sites? Does each site need its own? Well, it's done by the domain name. So if I type in, kumquat.com, I'm going to need an SSL certificate for kumquat.com. If I also have candyman.com, well, then I need a separate one for that. So each domain, because really after the domain, not actually after the server. Okay, the domain. Cool. Okay, page 178, they talk about remote access. So you want to be able to log onto your machine from home? Log onto your work machine from home? That'd be kind of cool, right? Some sort of remote services, so that I'm working a corporate job and I went home, I'm sitting on my own computer and I want to be able to log in. First of all, is that a little scary? Okay. You can imagine they would say, no, we're not, homie, don't play that game. Okay, we're not going to allow you to just log into your normal machine from home. We can't handle that. That's way too much security. So there are three different techniques you can use. One is called direct access, which is really what we're talking about, allowing log on to a corporate PC via a VPN. Now, hopefully, virtual private network is not a term you're not familiar with. In other words, I typically would get a VPN software from my company that I install on my machine that allows me to connect to their VPN, not something that I bought, right? Their VPN, and then connect to that, and then I could connect to their network. Now, direct connection could be just dump me out onto the LAN and I could do anything, or I could go in there and say I want remote access to my one PC. Kind of cool. All right. So, direct access basically does the VPN function, basically does the encryption thing. It has some really cool features for like when you print. Like, for example, I have a printer in my office, but I'm at home and I'm not paying attention. I hit print. Well, I don't want to have to jump in my car and drive to the office to get the printed piece of paper. So it has some really cool features. It says, I know you said print, and I know you think you're actually on your machine at the office, but would you really like me to print to your local printer? And you go, oh yeah, thank you. It's got some really cool features. And it allows, so some of the graphics processing can be run local. In other words, instead of having the, like, hopefully you would never be playing a game on your work computer, but the graphics processing could be run local on your machine rather than having the host machine generate the graphics and send frames to you over this slow link. So, okay, let's pretend like we are playing a game. You know, the frame count using direct access is going to be miserable unless you use this feature where the graphics processing is done local, then it'll be look like a normal game. These other ones where it's just talking about routing and remote access services, RAS, R-R-A-S, routing and remote access. This is the one that just dumps you out. You use their VPN and they just dump you into the corporate LAN. Poof, there you are. You get to see all the servers. You get to do everything, you know, but you're not connecting to a one particular PC. You're just there. Okay, so now you can connect to whatever services you want. And then the web application proxy is the third type. So a lot of companies want to kind of control what you see and what you don't, and how much time you're spending on the internet. And one of the ways you can do that is what's called a web proxy. Instead of having you go to port 80, they actually have a thing set up that all requests coming in from the corporate LAN, we're not talking about at home now. We're talking about so you're sitting at your chair and not doing remote. You're sitting at your chair and I go to some website, it's going to take that request and alter it and record it and cache it. And so the caching part is pretty cool. For example, let's say there's a thunderstorm coming and I wanted to check the weather. Well, 5 other people are doing the exact same thing. Well, what this guy will do is if we all chose to use the exact same URL, I hit it first. It says, okay, this is 5 minutes old. I'm gonna cache it up. And the next person who 20 seconds later says, hey, I want to see the weather, boom. They get the weather because I cached it up for them, and they don't have to go all the machine doesn't have to go all the way out to the internet to get something. So caching, oh boy, that's sweet. And can you imagine how that would cut down on the amount of traffic coming out of your corporate LAN if you had this type of a service, a web application proxy? Now, I will tell you, it can be used for evil. Well, no, not evil. It can be used for tracking, because now I have a way of tracking absolutely every place you go. I log it all. It's like Big Brother. And so that's good. And here's where you would put in filters. Like in the Army, this is where you can't go to porn sites. If you try to type in a porn site, it's going to come back and say, no, dude, sorry, not happening. So in addition to having that filtering capability, in addition to having the caching capability, it also can act as a filter. Very cool tool. We're not going to use it. Remote assistance, page 179. So I don't particularly like this feature, but you could, call somebody on the phone and say, hey, is it okay for me to take over your machine to fix this? And you go, yeah. And so they have to push a button, and then you can go in and do that. In a corporate world, that might save you some time, particularly if you're geographically spread out and somebody says, I don't understand this. Can you fix it? Can you unjam my printer? I go, great. I can be there in 5 minutes. I'll jump in a truck and drive over there, or you can allow me access to your machine. I'll fix it right now. Okay? Now, I had this set up at one time with my mom. She doesn't live in the same town as I do, and she would call up and say, well, I'm having trouble. And I said, okay, relax, dude. I'll fix it. Now, I had hers turned on automatically. You didn't even have to ask. I didn't like that. to tell you the truth. It was a little scary, but I did it. Okay. So on page 180, there's a thing called Remote Server Administrative Tools, RSAT. So here's the thing. We have a brand new domain controller. But I don't want to log on to the domain controller to do work, because I told you that you don't ever really mess with a domain controller. So wouldn't it be kind of cool if I had that entire list of things here? This entire list? All this? I had that on my regular PC. Ooh, that's what RSAT is. All it does is just add these tools onto your ordinary PC, so you don't have to log into the web, the domain controller, to be able to add a user or delete a group or do all those kind of admin functions. Okay, so I'm a system administrator, but I sit at a desk. I do not sit in the computer room. I don't sit at the server all day long. I'm an administrator, and I sit at a desk in a cube. And somebody says, hey, can you reset my password or whatever? I'd say, great, and I use the RSAT tools that are installed on my machine to be able to do those things. Okay. So another one called Remote Desktop. Now this is kind of old. It used to be called Terminal Services, and what would happen is, instead of you getting a real machine, you would just get a connection to a server that had a desktop, like a Remote Desktop Services. Okay? And it was kind of cool for a while. Quite frankly, it's not used that much these days. I mean, I can just understand how about like in a lobby of a building where you allow people to just wander in and sit down and do stuff. Maybe that'd be a good place for it, because it's not a physical machine. It could be a very wimpy machine because it's not actually running there. And if somebody blows it up, it's no big deal. I just wipe it out and start over again. So Remote Desktop Services. But it does allow me to do some cool stuff at home. For example, Windows 10 and 11 allow 2 people to be logged into your machine at a time using RDP. Well, one of them is using RDP. And so that could be handy. I mean, when I'm diagnosing a problem, like I'm a privileged user, but I need an unprivileged user to be able to test things. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. So I use RDP, not quite the way they expect RDS, not quite the way they expect it, but yeah, I can have more than one person logged on to a Windows 10 or 11 PC. Okay, so licensing on page 182. Each time you connect with it, you need a client access license, a CAL. So if I was to do a lot of RDS, I would probably have to buy. Okay, I'm expecting 10 people to be using RDS, so I'm going to have to go get 10 CALs. And CALs are, per person per year thing that you buy from Microsoft. Remote Desktop Gateway. This is basically part of the Remote Desktop feature. So typically only on servers, and this is what you would install, the role you would install that allow you to host remote desktops on that machine. Now, quite frankly, what the replacement for this is virtualization. I mean, Hyper-V does a heck of a lot better job of virtualizing this stuff than using RDS. I mean, I still use RDS, but for the reasons I just described. But for our terminal services, we ain't playing that game. VPN. So it's a way to secure a connection over a dirty link. You guys know how this thing works, right? I mean, you've had some networking courses. So I don't want to have any traffic going across the internet that's not encrypted. So HTTP, right? We talked about how we have a SSL certificate. That works great for the web because I can use HTTPS and I can sleep well at night knowing that no one is listening in on my conversation or messing with my traffic. But what about those things I just talked about having a remote connection and dumping me onto the network or the remote desktop, those kind of guys? Well, now I'm not using the web. I still need the encryption. I still need all those features we talked about proving who I am, making sure nothing got messed with, and encryption. I need all 3 of those features, and it's done through a VPN, a virtual private network. Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark. You guys know how this works.